So I had this question. Claimant called me. He's like, "Hey, I can't believe how ridiculous this $34 trillion debt actually is. How could it be this way? How could it actually be this extreme, this severe, so on and so forth?" And I said, "Look, it's going to get worse." And he's like, "No, there's no way. We've run out of money that we can borrow against. We can't pay it back. We can't afford, basically the monthly payments, the quarterly payments, the when it comes due during the year payments. We can't afford them." I said, "Doesn't matter." And he said, "Well, how can it not matter? That makes no sense." And then he actually said, and this surprised me, he said, "You have an MBA." I didn't know the guy looked me up. He's my client, but I just. And he's like, "You should know better." And I was like, okay. And then I thought about it, and my response was a much shorter version of this. But I do not believe there's any chance at all, that America has any true intention of paying back paying back any of the money towards that debt to make the debt limit go down, right? Well, at least with the amount of debt that we owe go down. And so here's my logic on why that is. Okay. Please remember to like, please remember to subscribe. Let's get right into it. The USA should be known as Murder Inc., right? Murder Inc., Murder Incorporated, the corporate existence of murder. Or put it another way, we have so much destructive force that no other country would dare take us on. Okay. Some of the flotillas that we send out, right, with the aircraft carriers and all of the additional ships that support it, have more weaponry and destructive power on them than literally large, actual, just countries that you would think would have all this capacity to destroy. No. The aircraft carrier group has more destructive capacity than essentially some of these major countries. There are even literally continents that have less destructive force and capability than one of those carrier groups. So the USA is kind of like Murder Inc. That's just the bottom line with it. Okay. Now, the only option is total and complete destruction when it comes to anyone trying to harm America. Okay. So the idea that somebody would try and land on America, take over America, it's almost an impossibility. Only if we had executives who were completely incapable of leading the country, having a proper military response, etc., would we be put in a place where anybody would ever try to take over America. Not guilty. Thank you for the $2 donation. That's absolutely awesome. Thank you. Very cool. Thank you. So the bottom line is this. We owe, as a country, significant billions and trillions of dollars, right, totaling $34 trillion, to the following entities: foreign governments, U.S. citizens, domestic investors, Federal Reserve, state and local governments, international organizations, and of course, Mother Earth to some degree. Now, you see, imagine the USA, and this is the easiest way to think about it. Imagine the USA was a mob boss, right? It was a mob boss, powerful person. And the mob boss takes out a loan at multiple banks throughout the state. Now, those banks will collect interest on the loans, but they won't ever try to shut the mob boss down, because if the mob boss doesn't pay them back, the mob boss will go ahead and say to them, "Look, I can't pay you right now. You're just going to have to sit and wait, and then I'll pay you back when I can." They're not going to do anything about it. The banks are not going to do anything about it because they do not want to be ended. They don't want a bunch of people being harmed at their banking institutions. So they're going to let it slide. They're going to say, "Okay, well, pay us when you can. Pay us when you can." Now, the reason for this, all right, is that at the end of the day, if a group is afraid, they will purchase protection. When a mob boss takes out a loan against a bank, that bank knows that mob boss owes them and will protect their entity if they ever want to come back and have more money. And so as a result of that, the mob boss kind of owes them, and they're buying protection from the mob boss. So it all kind of works. Now, instead of a highly dangerous mob boss, imagine a giant military created for the safety of the American people, right? That's beautiful. That sounds lovely. And then take that military and completely repurpose it for the safety and strength of the American government. Because the safety of the American people just, they could get rid of that. And they did get rid of that. That wasn't their main focus, after a little bit of having a giant military. And then they said, let's just focus on protecting the government, the thing, right? You know, like those cutesy like stories about like, oh, the people are the thing. It's not the land. Like all these cutesy like, you know, Star Wars films and, you know, movies about Thor and this and that. You know, the people are the country, not the land. No, no, no. The government is the country. That's how it works. The military is designed to protect the government, which is essentially the main thing that holds us all together. Cool. Now, so we've got that. You see, all the constitutional rights stem from death and destruction. I know that sounds weird that like the United States Constitution stems from death and destruction. That's literally what it came out of. You cannot have a new constitution without death and destruction on any meaningful level. Okay. So original wars that we had, Britain, death and destruction. Result, we had a new constitution. There is no higher right than the right to become incredibly violent and dangerous, right? You might think that, no, we have laws to protect against that. No, the highest right is for an entity to become extremely violent and dangerous. This is because when you become the alpha country, right, the alpha leader, no other country will be able to threaten your silverback status. When this happens, you get to take out loans, never pay them back, because there is no one who can force you to pay them back. When this happens, you can keep borrowing from different groups. We call this protection money, right? Or if we are using old world terms, it's the fealty payment, right? That goes back to like royalty and stuff like that. Now, when you are the little person, you pay a part of your money and resources to the big person for safety, right? You say, hey, big person, I'm going to give you this money. I need you to protect me from all the dangerous things that are out there that you can. This is why women who tend to fear their surroundings are more likely to date a bodybuilder rather than an intellectual. Of course, the super money intellectuals just build a big security system fence and hire protein power people to patrol it. Now, the point is with all this, okay, everywhere, and I mean everywhere, you can see fear paying danger to protect it from other dangers. Once again, people in fear paying for some danger to make the other dangers stand back and away from the thing that is in fear. I'll give you some more examples of this relationship so it kind of sinks in a little bit. The United States and NATO, the mob boss and the local barbershop, the border wall governor and the local citizens, the jacked up thug and the local female model, right? The giant tanker ship and the heavily armored patrol boat, the freedom fighter with the pistol purchasing an AK-47, the employer with the pension versus starting a business and being your own employer, the prison gang versus going into the shower alone. I know some of you guys will say, well, we pay too much into NATO. I know. America's not exactly managed properly. Right? We all got that. Now, the next thing is, you see, the Americans mostly don't realize that they are always in danger. Okay. So they make decisions like voting away legal firearms, knives, pepper sprays, etc., because it makes them feel more safe that criminals won't have them. Of course, criminals don't know these laws. They don't know the rules. They don't care about them. They just have no connection to those modern safety laws because to them, they obtained something dangerous and they're going to use it no matter what the law is. So every time we create a restriction on those things that help us protect ourselves from being dangerous, or rather from being essentially allowing danger to hurt us, and we become a little more dangerous, so other dangerous things aren't willing to go ahead and try and take stuff from us, we try to restrict our ability to be dangerous. All we're doing is allowing criminals to have a better shot at taking what we have. And that's a hard idea for a lot of people to understand. You know, I advocate for disabled to have higher levels of rights to firearms. I advocate for elderly to have higher levels of rights to firearms. Why do I do this? It's because they can't run away. Have you ever seen a 90-year-old run? What about an 80-year-old? That's not a pretty sight. They're not good at it because they're older. They can't do it. Same thing for the disabled field. There's a lot of individuals who are not able to run. They have canes, crutches, walkers, wheelchairs. They're stuck in a wheelchair. They can't roll away fast enough. So when it comes to these rights, these ideas of people having something that makes them more dangerous so other dangerous things won't try to harm them, I always advise against this idea of restricting something that makes you more dangerous, because you need that level of dangerousness to keep other harms from trying to harm you. It's a complex idea. I get it. It's hard for a lot of people to understand. I get it. A lot of people have been brainwashed on this. I get it. But just think about it a little bit. Now, of course, criminals, they don't care about these rules. And at the end of the day, as a result, nice areas, places where people with lots of money, they congregate to those nice places, they'll get some increased crime when those nice places restrict their citizens from having more items that make them dangerous. And you get a slight increase in crime. But what happens is that those nice areas then hire a bunch of guards, a bunch of this, a bunch of that, put up fences, put up security guards, all that stuff. And that keeps a lot of the crime out of the area that they're going to raise their children, live their lives. And if you've got money, you can do that, and that's fine. You can pass whatever gun restriction laws you want. You can pass whatever you want, and that's totally fine. It just doesn't work for everybody that's not the 1%. Because if you're not the 1%, you don't have money to build a literal giant concrete wall around your entire community, because you're not a king. You're not a queen. You don't have the money to hire people to patrol your house or your trailer or your whatever, your RV. So it doesn't work for everybody else, which is why you get these extremely wealthy politicians who don't even know how a firearm works. And all of a sudden they're like, let's restrict it this way and that way, because they don't live in the world where everybody else is punished as a result of their restriction of that person's ability to become dangerous so that other dangerous things won't harm them. Now, with that said, I think this is important. In a perfect society, defense of one's body wouldn't be necessary. Like, we wouldn't need to defend ourselves. We wouldn't have to protect ourselves. But this ideal can never exist because the threat of an external force will always exist, whether it's a dealer or a sun exploding or a space race that is aggressive, etc. And I hope this, helped you guys understand why our $34 trillion debt is only going to grow. And just going through this idea, we talked about the wealthy areas. We talked about people who have money to hire essentially these guards, put up these walls. There are places where the super poor, they can't do that. We're talking about St. Louis. We're talking about Baltimore, Detroit. We're talking about Memphis. These are all places where society fails because they restricted the ability of people trying to live their lives so that they would become less dangerous. And when they became less dangerous, they were less able to protect themselves and had to rely more on the police, which we now know as a result of St. Louis, as a result of Baltimore, as a result of Detroit, as a result of Memphis. The police departments cannot save a city on their own. And the fewer and fewer citizens that are armed and dangerous to fight off potential harm, the more likely that area will turn into, once again, St. Louis, Baltimore, Detroit, and Memphis. Highest deaths per capita. Highest deaths per capita, okay? So I hope you understand this whole $34 trillion issue. It's not going away. And why you should only worry about, and remember, the other countries have this problem too, but the United States, is going to stay strong because it has so much firepower. But the problem is this: the United States loses its ability to threaten other nations with complete and total destruction when those other nations start creating weaponry that can deflect the United States' ability to go ahead and protect itself. Now, I want to point out one thing. At some point, they are going to invent some sort of technology that involves a force shield, right? It's some digital field of energy or whatever that limits things from going through it. Explosions can limit those. People, matter, humans, whatever, from getting in and getting out. So you could literally have a DNA strand inside somebody and they won't be able to access that area because that actual force field will keep their genetics from entering into that force field. I know a lot of people don't think about that stuff, but that's the future. So the point is, understanding that we have those technologies like a force shield. The whole system is going to change because then little countries are not going to have to rely on places like America to defend them, which greatly reduces America's ability to say, hey, we're the big bad, we can protect you, give us more money. As a result of all of this, what you're likely to see is that Murder Inc., being America, will then lose its preferential treatment across the earth when it comes to gaining raw materials. Now, here's the thing. As time goes forward, okay, the fear of America getting destroyed, the fear of America having enemies will continue to increase because America, like the mob boss, having taken money from too many people, has created this negative existence across the earth. You guys have noticed this. A lot of countries hate us. A lot of countries are not fans of the United States. Many of you say, I don't give a shit. Who cares? I don't even know where that country is. And that's fine. That's fine. But just remember, like that mob boss taking money from all these different places, you've got two options. Place number one that gives us money to protect them, and country number two, right, that basically does not give us money because they can't afford to give us money to protect them. And then they fall into this existence where we end up being hated by them because we seek out whatever resources they have, raw materials, whether it's crystals, gas, fuel of some sort. We take those raw materials from that country, which sounds very similar to the Middle East and what we did there, and we convert them into things we can use here because they could not directly pay us to protect them like a mob boss would. Instead, what we have is essentially a country that will end up paying us through their raw resources once we take them over. Want to know what Russia did with Ukraine? Very similar situation. Okay, they forced them to not be allowed to have nuclear weaponry, and as a result, when the Ukraine said, "Hey, we want to do this. We're leaning more towards America," yada yada, Russia said, "No, no, 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 no. You're under our thumb, not their thumb." Anyways, guys, BK Dan, thank you for the $5 donation. I really appreciate that. Okay, so BK Dan said intention to pay off, yes, but you know what they say about good intentions. Yeah, so the Republicans are pushing this identity of paying off the national debt. It's never going to happen because the Republicans are very smart about essentially this theory, this doctrine, which is have a big stick and threaten people with it. And that's how basically America works from the Republican standpoint. And then, of course, Democrats are saying we just need society to keep moving forward. And their ideologue is basically, hey, we want to continue to pay for this, this, and this, even though we can't afford them. And we'll just magically create the money because we're America, and that's what we're going to do. So that's where we're at with politics going into 2024 election. Now, the next video I'm going to be covering, I've got actually a couple options here, and we can kind of pick whichever. But I think, the main thing is, I want to talk about the stimulus checks and the promises that are going to be made specifically for those going into the 2024 election, because a lot of people were let down when it comes to these stimulus checks and how it works and what would prompt them, etc. And we're seeing a significant amount of YouTube channels and Facebook groups posting that essentially a new stimulus is already on the books, that something is coming, and I want to explain what's going on with that. I will catch you at the next video. Please remember to like. Please remember to subscribe. Don't forget to go ahead and if you want to help the channel out, go to Google, type in Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution, Florida. The company will come up, leave some stars there. I will catch you guys a little bit later. Please, 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 please catch me at the next video if you want, and we will go from there. Thanks, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. All right, see you in about 5 minutes. All right, bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.